Rosenbaum was now running from my right side, and I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were three people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
Happy Saturday and welcome to the deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, November 13th, 2021, and we're so happy you decided to come and join us today. There is so much going on in the world. It's a wacky world. I'm waiting for us to wake up one morning and everything be all right, but I'm not sure about that. We're barreling towards a Thanksgiving. So that'll be coming up pretty soon. We just passed Veterans Day, and we got a whole bunch to talk about. So let's get to it. Let's go ahead and bring in Val Atkinson. Hey, Val, welcome back to the deal.
Hello, Ed. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, buddy.
Well, the clip coming in, I wanted to start there. The young man on the stand, Mr. Rittenhouse, in my book, he murdered two people. But let's we'll back up. What you saw was him shedding some tears, and some people have accused him of being crocodile tears and saying that he did a good job. He may want to take up acting as a profession after his demonstration on the stand. Talk to me about number one, he getting on the stand first. That doesn't normally happen. So what do you think is happening in this Kyle Rittenhouse trial up in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
In my opinion, Ed, I think the defense made a decision that he could draw sympathy from the jury. I think they knew that he was going to try to shed some tears and get very emotional. And they were going to talk about his mom and the fact that he was 17 years old. They were going to try to get the jury to see him as their son or whatever. So this was a ploy to get on the emotional side of the jury. Whether it worked or not, is yet to be known. I am not a person who sits on the Academy Award bench to determine who gets awards, but I tell you, if I were one of those people, I would at least give him honorable mention. This guy, he put on a pretty good act. I mean, I've never seen anybody with face frowned up like he was and can hardly catch his breath and can't make clear sentencing and muttering and all of that stuff, and not a tear in sight. Not one. Not a tear in sight. So it was drama, it was make-believe, and I don't think the jury is going to be fooled by it.
Well, I hope not, Val, but one other monkey wrench in this particular trial is the judge. I think he's a nut. So to that point, let me show you a little bit from this judge, and then I know you're not a psychologist, but I'm going to ask you to play one in a little bit. Let's take a look at that clip.
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor. I have. They come as texts, and then they start belittling me or whatever, in one way or another, and it can be quite lengthy. The exchange that's going on, between them and us, but they're entertaining. And so I don't know how to save text messages. I haven't figured that out, and I have a lot of things that I'm doing.
So Val, the judge here in this case is known for being a little quirky, but there was two things here. First, he starts out talking about the Asian food that's been ordered. And then he starts talking about his cell phone and how he gets his text messages and he doesn't know how to do text messages. And I think the bigger part of this is the second part about the text messages. The lawyers, I think, on both sides were just flummoxed by his whole explanation of going into how people send him nasty text messages. Now, this is an open court. And then he's talking about people who send him nasty text messages. And then he went on to say that he doesn't know how to really save text messages, and gets everybody off on a tangent when the discussion was, could the prosecution introduce video from a drone or from other sources other than the images that had already been shown? What I detect from this judge, Val, is that I don't know how you rate judges, but he seems to be crazy to me. Not only that, he seems to be on the side of Mr. Rittenhouse. I know you've watched some of the proceedings. What's your assessment of this judge?
Well, I am concerned. I'm highly concerned. The very first clip we saw that was ever divulged to the public was when he was berating the prosecution for action that he thought the prosecution should not have been taken. Of course, the jury was not available when he was doing this. But through that whole process, I had my eyes focused on the the prosecution. And the expression on the prosecution's face was, okay, Judge, you've been through this before. Are you finished ranting yet? I know, you got to do this. In other words, the prosecution wasn't surprised. It was like, you do this all the time. You're acting for the camera. You're trying to show people how tough you are. You're beating me up. I'm your whipping boy for the day. So go ahead, whip me up and let's get back to the trial. That's what I saw. So I walked away with the impression that the judge was an actor, that he is not genuine. And I agree with you 100%. It appears that he's already made up his mind if he's leaning on one side or the other. Now, I don't know if he's going to put his finger on his thumb on the scale and push this thing one way or the other for Rittenhouse, but I think if the prosecution gets their way and they are allowed to let the jury consider several other lesser charges, that Rittenhouse is in trouble because he may get away with murder, but I doubt very seriously if he'll get away with all charges that they could bring forth to.
I hope he gets away with none, but the reality is not looking that way. The one thing that strikes me about this particular judge, I can see him. He would fit right in a Mississippi courtroom in 1955. He just seems like that dude. Well, let's switch to another trial, the McMichaels down in Brunswick County, Georgia, in the murder of Ahmed Aubry. One of the things that's apparent here is that the judge is completely different in this case. One of the things that we talked about last week on the program last week was that the judge had admonished the defense that they were doing too many challenges to the jury and throwing out jurors. And we know what that was about. They didn't want any colored people on the jury. and they succeeded in getting all the colored people off except for one. Now, the good thing is the judge seems to be more balanced in this case. What is problematic, though, is that it is Brunswick County, Georgia, where I have spent time. It was not happy spending time there when I was with FEMA. But again, what just your general assessment of how that case is going compared to what's happening up in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
Well, it appears that the defense is putting all of their apples into one basket, and that's the basket of self-defense. And they want to show clearly that Aubry reached for the gun that was being carried. And their summation is that in the tussle and struggle with the gun, it went off. And even if Mike Michaels or whomever had their finger on the trigger, he was acting in self-defense. And I'm not sure how that's going to play out. You only need one juror to believe that cockamamie story. And the guys, they walk on that. That's, again, getting back to the Rittenhouse case again. That's why you need some lesser charges and don't hang everything on murder one, murder two, whatever the big charges to make it happen, because both cases, Ed, are going to be very tenuous. And either case could go either way. And I don't feel too comfortable about the results or the outcome of either of these cases.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Val. One of the other things, before we move on from this, I got some video from in the courtroom, and one of the interesting lines of question on Friday was the prosecution asked one of the police officers who had responded several times to people being inside of the property. Was there a difference between how they responded when white people were inside the property and Black people were inside the property? Let's take a look at that clip and then we'll talk about it.
17th, a white couple on Larry English's property. Did you respond to that?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did Larry English call you that night or anything?
I don't recall if he called me that night. He sent me the video from the 17th, but I received that video on a later date, not on the 17th.
Okay. Do you even know if you were working the night of the 17th?
I do not recall.
Okay. So the next night, November 18th, 2019, were you working that evening?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So on that evening, was that another trespassing call to the same location?
Yes, there was another call there.
Okay. So this is about a month later, you get a call. Did you respond to that location?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that's once again the open unsecured construction site at 220?
Yes.
What did you find when you got there?
Same house in the same state, nobody in sight. No, the unidentified Black male, same one from the previous October 25th incident, was nowhere to be found.
So Val, the prosecutor, comes right out and says, "Officer, the homeowner, on numerous occasions called about people being in the property. He had cameras set up. Did anything ever get taken? No." And then where we pick up in the clip is she says, "Well, there's a white couple in the house on this particular day. Did he even call you?" And he's like, "No." And then, "Did you look at the tape?" "Yes, I looked at the tape." And, then the next day, a Black person's in the house looking around, and he calls. The homeowner calls and the police responds, but he gets there and there's nobody there. It continued to follow this pattern, and it was obvious that Mr. Aubry was not the only person to go look in that house, right? So we come to the end of this, Val. The fact that the McMichaels had taken it upon themselves to go and mete out justice, for what purpose? It kind of harkens back to the Trayvon Martin case, where you have somebody saying they're trying to protect property, they're trying to protect the neighborhood. But Mr. Rittenhouse says the same thing. He was there trying to protect this car lot, supposedly. And then in this case, the McMichaels are trying to protect this unoccupied, unfinished house that everybody seems to be peeking into. What is your sense of this whole way that the police even responded to when there was Black people in the house compared to when there were white people in the house?
Well, Ed, we would love to be able to say that we live in a country of equal justice for all, and all are protected by the same law. It's not the case, really. We've only been out of slavery about 160 odd years or whatever. And the thing about it is that America is a race-conscious republic, always has been, and until we do some serious changing, always will be. So this is just a reflection of the culture that we practice in this particular country. You see a black guy, it reminds me of the film you showed a few weeks ago, a black guy in Walmart. He's an off-duty private detective, and he sees a guy shoplifting, and he grabs him to hold him down until the store detectives can come. And the police officer comes, he's told that the guy's in there got a shoplifter, and the police officer accosts the private eye. I mean, it's just something is bred and born within us. If you live in this country, if you are born here and you grow up in this country, whether you're white, black, spotted, or dotted, I don't care. You understand what the racial situation is here. And you begin to act that way. These people, in this case, you're talking about, Ed, are no different. You know, you see a black guy and a white guy tussling on the street, a gun laying somewhere, you grab the black guy and put him under a chokehold. You know, you assume that he is the bad guy. That's what this guy was doing, calling the cops. You know, you see some white people, they are honest people looking at possibly buying a house. Black people, you don't belong in that neighborhood. You ain't got the money to buy the house. You're just here trying to steal something. Yeah. I'm calling the cops. And that action precipitated and came on to end up in death.
And that is so tragic. I mean, well, we could talk about criminal justice and law and stuff for the next, 10 years. I don't think we'll come to a resolution. One last thing before we finish out this segment, race does permeate American society. One thing that happened Friday afternoon is the state of South Dakota just saved all their poor children from critical race theory. The state of South Dakota passed a law banning critical race theory in South Dakota schools. And I want you to know, Val, that's, they just went out on a limb and took the hard decision it's no damn black people in South Dakota, Val. 1% of the population, if that, and South Dakota is a small state. There's been no history of critical race theory being taught in South Dakota. We talked about this last week and how they use critical race theory and all this other BS, to win Virginia, and how all these school boards are constantly talking about it now. And nobody talked about it for the last 30 years that has been taught in colleges.
But
why the hell do you need critical race theory banned in South Dakota?
But you hit the nail on the head when you start talking about there are no black people in South Dakota. There are a lot of white kids, and that's what this is about. It's about the white kids. Being against critical race theory is a position that you don't want white kids growing up thinking that they belong to a group that did bad things to other people, which is the truth. They do belong to a group that did bad things to other people. Does it mean that they are bad? No. Does it mean that they can't just forget it? We can't put that in the past and go on? No, it doesn't mean that. We can do that. But you got to first have the T in truth and reconciliation. The T comes first. Truth. You got to admit the truth, apologize, be remorseful, commit to not doing that again, and work toward making amends, and you will be forgiven and everything goes on. They don't want that. They want to pretend and require other people to pretend. They want to pretend that it never happened, and they want us, people of color, that were the object of that issue, that we have to pretend too that everything's all right. And you know who I'm talking about. Talking about your girlfriend, Condoleezza Rice. I'm talking about your buddy, Clarence Thomas. They're at the top of the list, pretending everything's fine. And it didn't happen. All of those things between 1619 and today, they did not happen.
It ain't fine. It is not fine. You know what, Val? I hear some music in the background, so that means we need to take a break. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about gas prices. We're going to talk about shitty jobs that Americans don't want to take, and the reason why they don't want to take them. We'll talk about redistricting in North Carolina, a whole bunch more. So stay right there. We'll be back in just a minute. You're watching The Deal.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
Following up on the questions about gas prices again, just kind of taking a step back, there's some Republicans who have taken this moment where they've seen gas prices spike to criticize sort of the administration big picture, right? Canceling the Keystone Pipeline, halting leases for new drilling leases on federal land, saying that sort of the administration's policies writ large have contributed to the rise in gas prices. What's your response now to that?
Our response is that one, we haven't canceled existing there are existing leases that are continuing. Just to be clear, I know you know that. Not new leases, but just to be clear, and I know that's been a criticism, so that's why I said that, not an accurate one. Look, our view is that the rise in gas prices over the long term makes an even stronger case for doubling down our investment and our focus on clean energy options so that we are not relying on the fluctuations and OPEC and their willingness to put more supply and meet the demand in the market. That's our view. We feel that, but we also feel that there are a number of actors here, including price gouging, that we have concerns and we've seen out there. We've asked the FTC to look into the need for OPEC to release more that are the larger issues here, and that's why we've been focused on those options.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That is Val Atkinson, former professor of political science, author, radio talk show host, all kind of stuff. We're happy to have him in here every week. From time to time, we have guests. We're constantly trying to get people to come and sit in with us. Sometimes it's hard to meet schedule. We usually try to do this on Saturday and have it ready for you by Saturday afternoon. So in the meantime, think about what you're going to be doing Sunday morning. I'd like for you Sunday morning to listen to Connections with Val Atkinson. This week, Val, a programming note, and we'll mention it again, but you got a big guest for Sunday. Who's coming up on Sunday?
Representative Deborah Ross from North Carolina's 2nd Congressional District. And myself and you and Irv Joyner, we interviewed her, and some interesting issues came out about redistricting and those sorts of things. So I think it'll be a good time for people to tune in and listen. She's got some great things to say.
Well, Val, one of the things that we have to talk about is one of the things that you'll hear more from Congresswoman Ross is we talked about the economy and gas prices and inflation, that kind of thing. You saw Jen Psaki on the way in, the White House spokesman trying to explain why gas is going up. But the Republicans are doing what Republicans do, which is tell lies and try to make it seem as though that somehow Joe Biden is responsible for increasing gas prices. I know that you know that I know that gas prices are tied to crude prices more than anything else. Crude prices at one point had been negative. I don't know if you remember about a year ago, one day the market opened and gas, well, not gas, but oil was being given away. It was in the negative. And you know why? Because nobody was going nowhere. COVID had locked down the whole entire world and there was no demand for crude oil. Now, all of a sudden, people are back out on going to work, going to movies, going out to eat. And guess what? There's a debate, and the winter is coming as well. And there had been production slowdowns from people in the Middle East because they can do that and run up prices. And now crude oil is back at about $80 a barrel on a daily basis. Val, how do you deal with the Republicans' constant lying? They can't tell the truth. Gas was much higher relative to people's incomes all during the Bush administration. And it was not that different than what it is now under Donald Trump. If you look at inflation as a whole, right? How do Democrats give this message that Jen Psaki and the president are trying to give, that, there's a lot of reasons why gas is a little bit higher?
Well, and I need to jump ahead just a little bit to introduce my point of view here. And I know somewhere soon you have a clip from Tom Hartman that you're going to be sharing with the people about the economy. But one of the things that he talks about, and I talk about quite a bit, is that the Republicans seem to have an advantage over Democrats in messaging. And they get out their message a lot better than we do. This whole thing started back 20, 25 years ago, Ed, when we used to say Democrats try to communicate their message in a 1-inch thick white paper, while Republicans concentrate on bumper sticker slogans, 7-second sound bites, right? And things that people can really relate to, while all the time what they're talking about are dog whistles to get to the main motivating factor. In other words, they have a unwritten agreement that what I'm going to do with you, voter, I'm going to give you reasons that you can tell your neighbors and your other family members why you're voting for me. You and I know why you're voting for me. You're trying to protect this culture, and you're trying to protect white kids from CRT, and you're trying to protect the country from having another Barack Obama in the highest office in the land. But I want you to tell them it's because of the economy. I want you to tell them that you don't like inflation. And I want you to tell them that it's because of gas prices. And you'll know when we're winning, when they take the bait and start arguing with you about gas prices, you got them. Because that's neither here nor there. You're going to still vote for me because I'm going to keep CRT out of the schools, and they're going to be arguing with me about gas prices, and that's fine. But I don't think the Democrats have the wherewithal to get out of that conundrum right now. They're in it too deep. They've been in it too long. Most of them don't even understand that they're in it. And they're arguing about something that is not even the point. And one of the things that Tom Hartman points out is that America is not like it used to be a couple of decades ago, where you had this big bulging middle and a few hardcore on the right, a few hardcore on the left that wasn't going to change, but this big bulging middle that you had to go sell, and that they would determine who wins the election. Democrats think that that's still the model. That's not the paradigm anymore.
No, it's not.
It's an hourglass now. If you think about the hourglass, you got all of these big people on the left and on the right, little teeny bit of people in the middle. Mm-hmm. Okay? And Democrats still think that the majority is in the middle. And if they can come up with the most cogent argument, they can convince these people that Republicans don't know what they're talking about, or they are non-factual, and we can win them over. Hell, if you win all of them over, you only got 3 votes. So, I mean, it's just something that Tom Hartman, that I agree with, that he explains very well, that Democrats are off messaging. They're way off base. And even if you win this full argument that you've created, you haven't won anything.
Right. There's no benefit. It's no benefit to winning that argument. Val, one of the other interesting things that happened is you saw the infrastructure plan come out of Congress. We talked about that a little bit last Saturday. It, had to go to Senate, go through the magic Senate machine and come out with some agreement between the House and Senate. But one of the interesting things is that there were a number of Republicans in the House that voted for it, and they're getting drugged through the mud by your boy Donald Trump. And then at the same time, Mitch McConnell is getting drugged through the mud by Donald Trump as well for his support of it. And Mitch McConnell, he's not stupid. He knows that he needs to tell the people of Kentucky that, there's, some gravy in here for them. he knows how infrastructure works. Infrastructure always passes every 3 or 4 years, some sort of infrastructure in appropriation anyway for bridges and stuff. This is just a bigger package. So what about these Republicans who in the House that supported the infrastructure package? Do they have a future if Donald Trump is going after them? And what about Mitch McConnell? Does he even care? He's done all the damage he intended to do. I think his legacy is set. I don't think he cares about what Donald Trump says. But what about these Republicans backbenchers over in the House? Are they in trouble? Are they going to be primary?
They could some of them very well could be primary, depending upon how much they went along with the Democrats and how far they got away from the Republican mantra to cast that vote. One of the things that Republicans still want to do is they want to win back the House. So they're not going to cut off their nose to spite their face. They'll put up with some of those people in the Republican conference that voted Democratic. They'll put up with them if it means keeping the House or taking the House back, I'm sorry. So it remains to be seen. But if they have an overwhelming margin in taking back the House, those people that voted for this infrastructure package are in trouble.
Yeah. But, one of the other things that we've talked about in the last few weeks, remind everybody you're watching the deal, is this redistricting thing and the impact. They're going to write themselves back into control. And you're going to get somebody like McCarthy as the Speaker of the House, which is very dangerous. But, that notwithstanding, North Carolina, we've talked about North Carolina at the forefront of this, it being one of the more problematic places. We know that Democrats outnumber Republicans in North Carolina, but they will probably come out with either 10 or 11 U.S. House seats. Let's look at a clip real quick and then we'll talk about it.
New at 6, the controversial Congressman Madison Cawthorn could soon represent a large part of the Charlotte region. Congressman Cawthorn says he is eyeing the newly redrawn 13th district, which includes the western part of Mecklenburg County and all of Gaston, Cleveland, and Burke counties. WCNC Charlotte's Brandon Goldner explains who else is expected to run in that district and how these maps affect who you'll be voting for on Election Day.
North Carolina's population is surging, so the Tar Heel state gets one more congressional district. UNC Charlotte political science professor Dr. Eric Heberlich says state lawmakers have to adjust existing district lines.
So the ideal criteria for redistricting is that you have equal population by districts.
Except Dr. Heberlich says North Carolina's recent history says otherwise.
I like to joke that we have a permanent seat license at the U.S. Supreme Court for these type of cases. So it's highly likely that these maps will be contested.
In this new map, Congresswoman Alma Adams' district shrinks to just the city of Charlotte. Congressman Dan Bishop's district won't include as much of South Charlotte. And the newly redrawn 13th district will group western Mecklenburg County with all of Gaston, Cleveland, and Burke counties.
So, Val, here's Madison Cawthorn, the newest idiot from North Carolina. I guess he superseded Mark Meadows, who was the original idiot in the House delegation for the Republicans. Madison Cawthorn likes to threaten people. Madison Cawthorn is, by all accounts, is not a nice person. He's not that bright. He doesn't do anything in Congress other than throw hand grenades. But now he's thinking about switching districts because North Carolina is doing this redistricting. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure for the Democrats to try to figure out how to hold on to the seats they got, let alone lose. I mean, they may lose seats. Straight up lose them, right? Because they'll be in races where they just don't have a chance. Talk to me about Madison Cawthorn first. What is your assessment of him? And then talk to me about the chances for the Democrats in North Carolina.
Well, Madison Cawthorn is an idiot, as you said. He is a hand grenade thrower. He is a young kid. I think he's still in his 20s. And he wants to bring attention to himself. He sees this is his time in the barrel. This is his time to make something of himself in the Republican Party. Young guy going up, get the support. So he's out there doing whatever it takes to bring attention, and he doesn't care. He'll take any kind of risk. And that is very, very dangerous. He's wheelchair bound. He should be doing some things with the ADA. I ain't heard him say anything about ADA or any of those kinds of things. But right now, he just wants to do whatever is necessary to bring attention to himself. And I believe the map that I saw would give him a huge portion of Mecklenburg County outside of the city of Charlotte, because I do believe that Alma Adams would have the full city of Charlotte that would make up one congressional district. And Cawthorn would take up the rest of Mecklenburg County, plus some surrounding areas, maybe Gaston or Union County area, and to get to the number of whatever that number is for one congressional district this year. That would give him the opportunity to really have an impact on the Queen City, because he would be out there in surrounding area. And Alma would have to be looking over her shoulders and everything that happens. But this is a dangerous time here. The only safe seats I see with what they have now, and it's not over, would maybe be the Alma Adams' seat. And forgive me, I can't correlate the number with that right now because everything has changed so much. And Deborah Ross's seat, which she would have the majority of Wake County. I don't know if that's going to remain the second or if it's going to be the fourth or whatever. Everything is so tenuous right now. People can still bring suits under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That's still out there. But whether or not you have enough time to do anything to stop them from implementing this, I don't think so. I think they're still going to implement it. And come January 3rd, the 118th Congress, you'll have a new piece out there for representation of North Carolina in the Congress.
Well, I'm worried about North Carolina and a lot of other places. It just it gives me a headache to think about the fact that, it could be an 11-3 or 10-4. I mean, it's criminal. I mean, they would have 78% of all the representation out of 30% of the population. We often talk about the Electoral College, and we talk about each state getting 2 senators and how unbalanced that is. And we live in a very weird country. We don't believe in democracy. I've said it before that there's fascist elements that are, particularly in the Republican Party right now, that are real dangerous. I hear some music, Val. That means we need to take a break. On the way out, you're going to see Tom Hartman talking about some of the issues Val was talking about, what the Democrats need to do. When we come back, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to talk about Steve Bannon. We're going to talk about COVID. And we're going to talk about this dude named Cam Newton. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this mess.
Sending our jobs overseas, these insane so-called free trade policies brought to you courtesy of the Reagan, Bush, and Clinton administrations, principally Reagan and Bush. Bill Clinton just signed the laws. But Reagan and Bush negotiated these things, this whole new neoliberal free trade policy, which has gutted our manufacturing sector, sent 60,000 factories, shut 60,000 factories in the United States, many of them sent overseas, and lost us tens of millions of jobs. And what are we left with? Well, this is kind of part 2 of yesterday's rant. What we're left with are jobs that involve things like saying, do you want fries with that? And those kind of jobs historically don't pay worth diddly squat. And I mean, this is the American, well, just to put this in historical context.
Severe weather can strike anytime, anywhere, but there's a simple way to stay safe. Hey, Jim Cantore here. I stay safe in dangerous weather by planning ahead. You can stay safe too with a few easy steps. Build an inexpensive kit with supplies for your family's needs. Write down important information like phone numbers and medications. Always talk with your family and remember any pets in your planning. Be ready, be safe. Start your plan today at ready.gov/plan.
We're coming back with breaking news on former Trump advisor Steve Bannon, who you may remember the House found in contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with the January 6th Select Committee. That matter was referred to the Department of Justice for possible criminal charges. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams has some new developments on this. Pete, what's up?
Well, the grand jury now has indicted Steve Bannon for contempt of Congress. This is the contempt charge that was referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington on October 27th for his refusal to provide testimony and documents to the committee that's investigating the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol.
And welcome back to our final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We've been talking about Rittenhouse, the McMichaels, the economy, gas prices, redistricting, a whole bunch of stuff, Val. We always pack in a lot of stuff. On the way in, I know this is going to break you up. I was hoping you weren't going to be shedding any tears when we came back in. You saw a clip from MSNBC from Friday of the indictment of Steve Bannon.
Yes.
And I know how that upsets you so, Val. Talk to me about Mr. Bannon and you're upset over him being indicted.
Oh, yeah, I'm crying big crocodile tears. But it was about time. I think that Merrick Garland felt the pressure. I think if the media and other Democratic operatives would not have kept asking, where is Merrick Garland? What is he doing? How is Bannon getting away with thumbing his nose at the law? And it just kept going and going. So somebody got to him and said, hey, you need to move, Merrick, let's go. And they went ahead and did that. But I think that this is just a normal thing. If it had been anybody else about anything else, we wouldn't even be talking about it. Okay. But the deal here is I saw, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. She's a former congresswoman from Michigan. And she was saying, she was being asked in an interview, CNN, do you think the Bannon indictment is going to serve as a message to others that are looking down the same road? And she said, I hope so. I hope, people would take a look at that and start acting like adults and come on in and give. And I'm saying, you've got to be crazy. That's one of the problems that you guys got, okay? You want other people to do your job for you. You want the criminal to lock himself up and throw the key outside the cell. What about you? Who's going to do the work that's required when they don't answer the subpoena? Who's going to do the work when it's required when they thumb their finger at you? Somebody's got to do that. And if you don't want to do it, you need to step out the way and let somebody go do it. That's the problem. You can't talk everybody into doing this because that's the way you want it. You want a preponderance of the evidence to get on the side and have people to say, oh, well, I might as well go give myself up now. Let me get a plea deal now. That's how you like it. You don't like trials. You don't like locking people up, arresting people. You don't like any of that kind of stuff. You like people just to give up and give in and say, okay, I'll do it your way, Mr. Democrat. But that ain't the way the world works anymore. If you're going to be the jailer, if you're going to get paid as a jailer, you're going to have to lock some people up. You may even have to crack a couple of heads from time to time. And if you don't want to be in this kind of business, get out.
Yeah, politics is rough, dirty business. And to get what you need to get done, you have to, really make some hard decisions.
You got to break some eggs to make omelets.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things also that I've been waiting for is I want Mark Meadows to be indicted as well. He just a horrible, human being. I mean, the fact that he and Bannon and those folks met at the Willard Hotel and tried to plan a plot to literally, overthrow the government.
Yeah.
And then you still have Republicans on fake news over at Fox, the real fake news over at Fox, the real fake news, you get that, over at Fox, still trying to say that January 6th was just another day, that there's nothing, to write home about here, that there's nothing special about it. But Val, what I kept thinking about is how often we had to hear about Benghazi, how often we had to hear about Fast and Furious, how they continually drug Democrats up to testify about this, that, and the other whenever Republicans had a chance, knowing full well there was no outcome. They were not looking for an outcome. They didn't expect anybody to go to jail, even though you can say lock her up all you want to about Hillary Clinton. There was no chance that she was ever going to go to jail over her emails. There was never any chance that Benghazi was going to turn out to be anything. There was never any chance that Fast and Furious was going to lead to Barack Obama of writing some memo saying sell guns illegally to people. Why is it, though, that you can't go back and talk about those things? We just let that go. Are we just at a point where we know what the Republican playbook is? They count on people being stupid and not, really knowing how any of this works. Where are we?
Well, the thing about it is all of those things you were saying about Benghazi and Fast and Furious and all those other kind of things, Republicans knew that wasn't going to work. They had no idea that Hillary Clinton was going to be perk walking and that kind of thing. But it worked. That whole pursuit about Benghazi may have been worth 100,000 votes. May have been worth 50, 75,000 votes somewhere. That's what they wanted. They got that. The whole issue about Fast and Furious and wrapping that up with Holder and the color of his skin and wrapping that up with Obama. It worked. And Democrats have got to start understanding that, look, the curveball that the pitcher threw you on the outside of the plate, he didn't expect you to swing at that. He set you up for that screwball on the inside corner on the next pitch, okay? And we just don't understand that yet. They're setting us up, they're throwing stuff on the outside, and we're saying, oh, well, this, that, and the other. They knew it wasn't going to work. They knew it wasn't going to be a strike. They're setting you up. They set us up, and they probably got somewhere between 50, my guess, between 50 and 100,000 votes because of what they did to Hillary. And just relentlessly, casting her as someone you can't trust, somebody that you may not need to put in the highest office in the land. That's what they wanted to do to get those votes.
And that's all they needed. Yeah,
we blew
that's all they needed. So Val, before we move on from this topic, obviously they're not going to change their strategy. They're going to continue to do stuff like that. We already talked about critical race theory and all the stuff they've been throwing at the wall. And say nothing happens with Bannon. Say he can find a way to weasel himself out of this. Donald Trump seems to be able to weasel himself out of things all the time. I had hoped the state of New York was going to come with some indictments or whatever. Maybe it'll still come. Donald Trump is obviously lining up to run for president again, or at least be involved in choosing who the Republicans are going to have as their nominee for the next president. Are we just going to have to sit here and take it?
Well, the thing about it is, if Donald Trump becomes president, unless he outright steals it, and there's too many things, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm looking at my neighbors. I'm looking at my grocer, looking at my doctors, the bus drivers. These are the people that will allow Donald Trump to become president if he becomes president again. They are going to vote for him. And I'm not going to blame those guys. I will blame our people, because when it comes to races like the Senate in particular and governorships all across the nation, you can't blame the Republican Party or anybody else It's individual voters who've got to do that. And if white people are sufficiently scared enough that you got to watch blacks, they're going to take over this country, and you need to put them back in their place and so forth and so on. So you need to go down there and vote for a guy that can do this, like Donald Trump. That's what they'll do.
Yeah.
And what they're saying at that time, this is the kind of country we want. And either you stay here and you take it, or you leave and you go to Canada, or you go back to Africa, or wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
But these guys are showing their true colors, Ed. And I think we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention.
Well, Val, you need to stop scaring white people.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem here. That, anyway, it's still a lot to talk about there, and we'll deal with that in the weeks to come. I have got to try to figure out a way to get people to be more cognizant of the school board races, the state house and Senate races, and all kind of stuff that have much more impact on your life than the presidential race, which is extremely important. But like you said, these Senate seats are going to be absolutely life or death for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate, speaking of life or death, Val, COVID, I want you to watch the clip and then we're going to talk about it.
Tonight, what's unfolding in hospitals from California to Colorado is now our clearest sign of a winter surge. With COVID cases climbing in 17 states, our national plateau is giving way to a steady rise in infections.
We need every single bed that is in our state.
Already at a breaking point, Colorado is now implementing crisis standards of care, prioritizing staff in their overwhelmed hospitals.
You may have a different level of care had you not come in today versus maybe 6 months ago.
Okay, Val, so you turn on the TV every night and there's games and there's thousands of people in the stands. Football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Everybody's going to the movies and going out to eat. And then that clip that we just saw was from the news on Friday night, last night, that in Colorado, they have a surge going on, and a lot of other Midwestern states, they have a surge going on, and their numbers are actually going back up. Why are we still here? I think I ask this every week, Val. I am just completely mystified. Did we let our guard down again? This will be wave number 5, Val. And you see they're rationing care in Colorado. And Thanksgiving is coming up. I mentioned that at the beginning of the show. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to feel pressure because they didn't get together with Aunt Sally and them last year. So they're going to try to do it this year. What's going to happen with this? Are we going to get out of this in the next year or two? Is it going to take that long?
Well, I hope not, Ed, but the trend appears to be going in that direction, that every time it looks like we're getting a hold to the next strain or whatever that comes out, something else pops up. I am buoyed a little bit about the increase in vaccination rates nationwide. I'm buoyed a little bit about the increase in mask wearing, although you got a lot of people who are still trying to keep kids from wearing masks and that sort of thing. Overall, more people are wearing masks more, and more people are getting vaccinated. So that gives me hope that if we can continue down this road, we'll be much, much better off. I think we're going to do a lot better with COVID in the long run than we're going to do with our national politics, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, well, I'm just ready to get out of this. I know everybody else is too. I mean, let's be honest. This has been a very trying time. I can't imagine the Spanish flu in 1918. they didn't have any of this technology, and communicating with people was extremely difficult. But guess what they did do, Val? They wore masks. They did social distancing in 1918. And we can't seem to do it now. And I'm just, I don't know. I mean, and I'm still seeing these stories, Val, of people on their deathbed saying they wish they had gotten vaccinated. You would think by now. Yeah, you would think by now. And I think the sympathy quotient has gotten pretty low for those kind of people. You know, a lot of people aren't sympathetic to their story. Well, Val, but before we run out of time, there's one important story. I wrote about Colin Kaepernick a couple weekends ago in relation to John Gruden. And I was talking about how, you know, everybody knows the NFL is full of racist team owners and coaches. The whole culture of football, American football, that is. Let me qualify that because, you know, I used to be a rugby player. and American football is a weird sport. It's very Southern. You know, you got that Southern mentality, and these boys are out there entertaining the masses, and they don't want you to date their daughter, or if you step out of bounds and do something wrong, they're willing to throw you to the side. But as long as you're running the ball for their ball club, they love you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so get up on Friday morning yesterday, and guess who's coming back to Charlotte? Cam Newton. So let me show you a clip of Cam Newton.
I'm so excited to be back in Carolina and to be playing meaningful games, not just no one-day contract. Put your, you know how that go. So for me, it's like, man, God has granted me an opportunity that a lot of people don't even get. So I got to do right by it. So that means I have to prepare the right way. I can't assume, I can't just guesstimate, because every opponent almost has the same energy. It's irrelevant, bro. We know who you are. We may fool with you, we may not. It's still about winning football games. And when you have an opportunity to win football games and it count, it's something special. So yeah, this second go around, man, it's so much to be grateful for. But I think the preparation is going to be extremely key, being that I'm so far behind, and I don't want to take nothing for granted.
So Val, Cam says he's thankful for the opportunity to come back and so on and so forth. And I want to juxtapose that against Colin Kaepernick, who probably was as good, if not a better quarterback. He led his team to the Super Bowl too. He didn't win. Cam didn't win either. But when Kaepernick was under center for the 49ers, they were getting into playoffs, you know, and all that stuff. And he was banished from the league for taking a knee. And so there's a dichotomy here. I will watch American football this weekend. I will be interested in what Cam Newton does. He probably won't play this weekend, but he could conceivably help the Panthers at least get into playoffs because they have a good enough team. But you know as well as I do, Val, the Panthers had Sam Darnold as their quarterback, and their star running back was another white guy named McCaffrey. What were the Panthers doing? It wasn't that subliminal to me. I think it was blatant. I think it's what the Patriots used to do in how they put white people in positions like running back and wide receivers to try to convince people that you need to root for this team because we're better than these other teams. We don't have these bad black people. Am I off base?
No, you're not off base at all, Ed. And you know, I don't know where to start here, but you started talking a little bit about Colin Kaepernick. And one of the reasons that he's not back is because that's an ownership decision. It's not for the coaches or the GM to make that decision solo by themselves. And the owners don't need anything. They got all the money they'll ever need. They can't spend it. They're not looking for a decision that's going to make them better or make them richer. So, and it's just a few of them. It's only, what, 32 of them. So they are sitting back thinking, I want to run this thing like I want to. And I want to send a message. You're not going to desecrate my flag, you know. And I don't care what your reason is or whatever. And your punishment is you're out of the league forever. And that's just the end of it. So that's something we need to understand about the power of ownership and that kind of thing. And the league is 70% black plus 70% plus black. So they need some white heroes. So you can put white butts in the seats in these stadiums and buy the paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff. So that's when they start looking for the Sam Donalds and that, McCaffreys and those kind of people. And you look at the New England Patriots and all white offensive line with a white quarterback, a white wideout, and a white tight end. I'll tell you what, there has never been so many Patriots fans in the state of Mississippi. The state of Mississippi has never rooted for Yankees before, but so many white people in Mississippi think that Patriots are the best team, especially when Tom Brady was there.
Yep.
And that was their team. And it was all about color.
Yeah.
It was all about whiteness. That's why they were rooting for that. But in this case of Cam Newton, I personally am glad that he's getting this chance. I was on the side that really berated him and came down on him hard when he was having those problems in Carolina before, when he acted, and I said it on the air, that I thought he was acting immature. When he refused to be interviewed, he pouted and went and sat in the corner, did a lot of crazy things when he couldn't win, that a man in his position, of his stature and fame, should not have been doing with his responsibility and that sort of thing. But, you know, everybody can make mistakes. Everybody should be given at least a second chance. And I'm at the front of the line and giving people second chances. And I wish Cam Newton all the best. I'm welcoming him back. I'm going to be pulling for the Panthers if I can, that when he does come back, not this weekend, but the following weekend, I hope he does well, and I'd love to see him in the playoffs. Yeah.
And I was glad to see that interview from yesterday where he talked about how humbled he was, and he welcomed the opportunity to show that he could work hard. He wasn't sounding like that when he left. I can tell you that.
Right.
You're right. He was not acting according to all the opportunities he had. But you know what, Val? Guess what? We're about to run out of time. So I need to ask you. I mentioned Deborah Ross coming up, Congresswoman Deborah Ross coming up on Sunday on Connections. Talk a little bit more about that real quick before we get out of here.
Yeah, well, we going to be talking about redistricting and what's going to happen in North Carolina and the state of the House and so forth. And made a commitment to have her to come back on a little later, and that's going to be fine. I didn't get a chance to talk about the book I recommended, which is one of my books. And the reason I'm going back and recommending that is because it's very relevant now with what's going on with the Republicans. It's called God, Guns, Gays, Gestation, Genealogy, and Government. All the G's. The short title is called Distractions, and it can be purchased out on Amazon, like you find a lot of other books out there and things. But I discussed that just a little bit, not enough, because I wanted to recommend that. So that's my book recommendation for the week, Distractions by Val Atkinson, and not new, published in 2008. So it's an old book, but it is relevant to what's going on today in politics in the United States of America.
It is still very relevant, Val. You know what? We could talk for a long time, but we're going to give people a break and let them get on with their Saturday and their weekend. In the meantime, folks, I mean, really, listen closely to what you're being told, especially about this economy and why we're in an inflationary period and why gas is at the price it is. Do not get off on a tangent and start believing some of this. I'll just call it bullshit. We do not have time for that. We are in a crisis mode, especially over this redistricting and a whole bunch of other stuff. So guess what? We're going to get out of here, go out and do something good for somebody today, and then come back with us next weekend, and we'll do it all over again. You've been watching The Deal. Thanks a lot. Bye.
We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold. We're cold.
Rosenbaum was now running from my right side, and I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were